Good morning. I'm Holly Magnuson, and I'm here with Shawn Kohrman for Ask the Security Guy.
Good morning.
We're going to got a lot of things to talk about today, and we're going to a lot to do and a lot to talk about. Just as a reminder, if you have questions, you should see on the right-hand side of your screen the Ask a Question box where you can type in a question and we'll see it and try to get it answered. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shawn. And what are you going to talk to us about first, Shawn?
Well, Holly, we've had over the weekend some really good spam messages floating around APU that have unfortunately been very successful, especially with our students. So we're going to show some examples of what those look like, how they work, and hopefully give people an advantage over what's happening. It should be noted, though, these are not the messages we were talking about with the Fish Me program.
That's
These
right.
are real phishing messages with real bad guys attached to them. So with that, are we ready to show off some of these guys?
Let's try it.
All right. I'll try to share my screen here. Okay. So what should be on your screen is one of the emails that we have floating around right now. The from is an actual APU user who had his account compromised. But as you can see, the name comes across as Google Plus, and then it's got this scary subject line of account suspension notice, and then the reply to goes to google_account@gmail.com, which all looks fairly legit until you go to this continue with verification code, which goes to a bad website. This one has been really effective, but if you look down here, you'll see the copyright is 2015 GR Nail Inc. All rights reserved. And what they've done, instead of Gmail, it's GR Nail, because unless you look very closely at that teeny tiny font, it's going to look like Gmail. So the next one we have is from the APU Sakai team. Now this one has also been very effective in getting our students compromised. So far, all of the attacks and all of the compromises appear to be sourced out of Nigeria. That may or may not be actually the fact, but that's where they're showing up. And then our support team over here has been actively kicking them out of people's accounts while we do cleanup. But again, the name is APU Sakai team, which looks legitimate, except it's not. The actual email address in this case was from a student account at apu.edu. And then you can see this was just from yesterday. And then account update, APU alert. And then click here to log in. So again, as you mentioned, Holly, before, if you're already logged into Gmail and you go to log into another Gmail product, it's not going to ask you for your username and password again.
And that's really important because we even had one of the came through, it specifically said you will need to log in to access this document. And so they're trying to, fool you into thinking you still have to log in.
Absolutely. So, and the last one, and this is, as near as we can tell, this is the original that started this chain of events for us. It is also from Google+. The email address in this case was also a valid APU address from a compromised account. Someone who had, I believe, gotten this email originally from the outside. But then the actual message was in this PDF document. So we often encourage people not to open attachments or click on links in emails that they don't know or that seem suspicious. Well, in this case, it came from a valid APU user, but the name was wrong. So those are some of the clues that should have tipped people off. But if not, we're here to learn new things. That PDF is this. Now, I am opening this on a safe machine that I use for this kind of testing. I don't recommend anyone else opening this on your standard desktop computer. The machine I use for this is set up for this kind of thing. So now you can see here's the PDF message that was supposedly from Google. You see the formatting looks good, the color scheme looks good. The language, our system have received multiple accounts shut down. So you can see these slight, very subtle grammar issues, punctuation issues. But here, this is an actual clickable link in a PDF. Now, if we click on this, it takes us to this URL, which then is using a Google URL shortener called goo.gl. And what that does is it takes a big long link and makes it this short, nice and short but cryptic link. That takes you here, which looks just like a Google sign-in page, except if you look at the address bar, it's very much not. So let's go ahead and log in here. And we'll use a passphrase. And for the sake of the audience, I'm not going to share what that is. I'm sure the spammer will appreciate it. And then we're going to click Sign In. Now, in order to work well with Google's two-factor authentication, we're going to ask you also for your phone number or an alternate email address. So let's give them a phone number. And we're going to hit Continue. And it takes us to an actual Google page, which is the google.com policies page. So the whole way through this process, it looked like Google. The fonts were right, the screen was right, the theme was right on the page, but the dead giveaway throughout that whole process was up here in the address bar. So again, hard to spot unless you take a good hard look at what the giveaways are. So was that helpful at all, Holly?
That was very interesting because I don't have the setup that you do, so I've never been able to go ahead and click on one of those.
Okay.
But again, as you took us through it, it's asking all the right questions, and it would be very easy for people to think it's legitimate.
Yeah, these were quite well done. These were quite well done.
And they've been very successful, unfortunately, for us.
Yes, unfortunately, they have been very successful, especially among our student population.
So for those of you who work with students, have student workers, if you're a faculty member, please encourage them not to fall prey for this. It puts all of us at risk because these didn't have any drive-bys, did they?
No, none of these had drive-bys. These were all username and password collectors.
And when we talk about drive-by, you want to go ahead and explain that for everyone?
Sure. A drive-by website would take that URL that was in the PDF, for instance. You would click on it, and the web page that loaded would try to infect your machine with a virus without you doing anything other than loading the web page. So by clicking on the link, if you had an older computer, with an older version of Internet Explorer, for instance, and say your antivirus was out of date, this web page could very easily load a Trojan or another piece of malware onto your computer that most commonly is a keystroke logger. And what that does is it records everything you type and sends it back to a bad guy. So, and on an average day, you're probably going to type a username and password for something.
Yep.
And that's what they're waiting for.
Now, what about people who use a password manager like Dashlane or LastPass? If they get a virus like this, a drive-by that's doing a key logging, are they also at risk?
Well, yes and no. Dashlane and LastPass both encourage you to set up two-factor authentication. And what two-factor authentication does is it's going to send a text message to your phone after you log in, and the text message you get on your phone is going to have a code. And when you try to log in, LastPass is going to take your username and password. They're going to send you that code, and they're going to ask you on the web page for that code, which you put in, and then, only then, will it let you log in. So that's how it's safe from a bad guy getting just your username and password, because they're not going to have your phone or that text message to complete the process. So will will a keystroke logger get them their username and password to LastPass or Dashlane? Yeah, it will. But they can't do anything with it if you're using two-factor authentication, which both encourage you to set up.
And I think, I don't think I had to do anything to have Dashlane do two-factor. It just was set up that way.
Yeah, both of them ask when you set up your account, they ask for your mobile phone number so they can just automatically enable it.
Mm-hmm. So if you have any questions about the phishing that's been happening, that's been very, very busy this past weekend and this week, feel free to ask those questions, and we'll come back to that. But for now, we're going to talk about Apple Pay and Google Wallet. We see a lot of commercials for Apple Pay right now, and people want to know, is that safe? Is that a good way to spend my money?
So it's really interesting. We had this question come in from one of our APU folks here about particularly an app called Venmo, which really prompted the conversation. Well, what about these mobile banking apps and mobile payment apps in general? So I wanted to take some time today and talk about the relative security of these kinds of applications, because people obviously want the convenience of those tools. I mean, I use certain types of them as well on my phone. So I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about that. To give you some frame of reference, there's always caution to be exercised when using mobile banking apps. A security firm very recently did some research, and they looked at 40 different banking apps that service 60 different banks in 20 different countries. There were two major problems that they found. In that group of applications that they looked at, 70% of the applications did not support two-factor authentication. So if your username and password were ever compromised as a result of your phone being lost, or someone shoulder surfing, or whatever, there isn't any type of second-level verification for these applications, which gives somebody instant access to your account if they can get a hold of it. The other side of the coin was 40% of them, which is not a great percentage, accepted any SSL certificate. So what that means is SSL is that HTTPS. It gives us that little lock in the address bar. What that does is it makes sure that everything that goes between your computer and the bank is encrypted and thus safe from being sniffed. This 40% means that if I created a fake SSL cert, I could get in the middle of your connection to your bank. Say you were at a Starbucks and decided to check your online banking. If I was also in the Starbucks, I could intercept your connection to your bank and see in plain text everything that went back and forth between your computer and the bank. Your username, your password, your account information, all of it. Because these 40% aren't doing proper verification of that certificate that handles that encryption process. So now, as is always the case in security, when stuff like this hits the news, like this survey did, the mobile application providers will step up and start correcting it. And I can provide a link to the survey so you can verify your whatever application you're using against the list that were tested. I'll put that in the show notes on security.apu.edu for everyone to be able to check. But in particular, I wanted to take today and talk about Google Wallet, Apple Pay, and Venmo. So Google Wallet supports two-factor authentication. They support a PIN code right on the phone, and they encrypt everything with very, very good encryption protocols. Um, so at a high level, I would say they're a very, very good tool to use. Uh, for for instance, you can store your loyalty cards on there for CVS, for Vons, for Walmart, for Walgreens, you know, because everybody has a loyalty card that they want you to use. You can also store your debit cards, or you can have your actual bank account and routing number stored in there as well. So that's obviously a cause for concern because anytime you have that level of information stored somewhere, that's you're increasing your risk. Apple Pay as an application does the same thing. It also does a great job of storing and encrypting and protecting that data. And it supports a PIN. So both Google and Apple, the idea is you open up the application, you enter in some kind of PIN that you've set up. With Google Wallet, it's automatic. With Apple Pay, you have to set it up, and that's really for a convenience factor. But again, one of the things we talk about often is securing your mobile device. So what happens if you have one of these applications and you don't have a PIN set up? So you have your Venmo on your phone, you have it linked straight to your bank to transfer money to whoever, and you lose your phone. Well, if your phone doesn't have a PIN code or some type of lock on it, whoever picks up that phone can help themselves to your bank or your debit card or your credit card or whatever you have set up in there. So, what I recommend is if you're going to use this kind of application, know that there are risks associated with it, with the convenience that you're looking for. My preference in terms of use is Google Wallet, but I'm an Android user. Apple Pay has done very well in all of the security reviews of it. The only people who've had a real knock on Apple Pay, the the vulnerabilities that were found were not actually with Apple Pay itself. They were with the credit card companies that they support. So again, while I'm not an Apple fan, I do have to take my hat off to Apple on this one. They've done it well again. Google Wallet, my favorite, does it extremely well. Good, strong encryption, good, strong practices underneath it, and good user interface to get along with. And then Venmo is rapidly increasing in popularity, and they're a young company, so their security reviews are not that great, actually. There's been a number of issues where Venmo accounts have been compromised, passwords have been reset, and the users never got a password reset notification, which they should have. So they didn't even know their account was compromised until large chunks of money were gone. Customer service has been struggling to keep up because they're growing so quickly. So there's problems there where people have had to go directly to the bank to resolve the problem rather than working with Venmo to resolve it first. The concept behind Venmo is really cool, where you have an easy way to split a bill, to share a cab, share a meal, and split the cost, and basically transfer money from one person to another very quickly. Unfortunately, apps, in this case Venmo, because that's who we looked at, they're having some growing pains, and frankly, right now, I don't recommend using them. I think, given their trajectory and the way they're growing, I think they will mature into a very, very good, secure company. But they're in that phase right now where they're having some growing pains, and quite frankly, I wouldn't take the risk with them. But I know my comfort level is different than many people's.
And for some of us, we don't have that much money for them to take, so
Well, and for instance, and there are safe ways to use it. So, for instance, if you had a low limit credit card that you use just for that, a separate bank account where you transferred small sums of money in for that purpose, those would be safe ways to do it because that limits any potential damage. So if you like Venmo, if you're using Venmo, I would not hook it up to your main accounts or any high value credit cards because then that helps reduce the scope of what could happen if something bad does happen.
and so much of it, as you've talked about to us many times, it's layers of protection.
Yeah.
Having a PIN code on your phone, having it secure, having good passwords on our bank accounts and on,
hmm
our Google account and that type of thing.
Yep. And that's exactly right. I mean, so you lock your phone. You have a PIN code set up on the app. So if somebody gets into your phone, they still have to guess now what the PIN code is for the application. It's those different layers of security and using different passwords and passphrases across everything, which is why we need a password manager to keep our sanity. But that, again, all those different things are small layers of security which stop a bad guy from getting in easily. And quite frankly, if you're annoying enough, they'll go somewhere else. And that's really what you want. You don't want to be the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I can't, I emphasize every chance I get with people in my training classes, having those passwords, on your accounts that are at least 16 characters long, and that idea of a passphrase. It's very easy to remember a phrase,
Right.
and especially if it makes sense to you and no one else.
Well, and there's also been some studies done that show that a passphrase that because in our context of a passphrase, it is generally an actual English phrase with normal punctuation and spelling, spaces in some cases, depending on what the website supports, and then small substitutions like at signs for A's and dollar signs for S's. Because it is natural to type, it is also much easier to remember. So, but there's studies that have shown that the more complex it is, the harder it is. If it's unnatural to type it, it will be equally hard to remember it. But if it's easy to type, it'll be easy to remember.
Hmm.
I thought that was just one of those little interesting fun facts.
I like that. And it makes sense because if it's natural, and sadly there have been times when I have to, when I'm supposed to be typing an S, I'll type a dollar sign because I'm getting used to that substitution
Yeah,
in some cases. So,
yeah, it certainly does make for a challenge.
so I don't know if there's any questions out there. I haven't had any pop up yet, either about the phishing that's been happening. That is not the phishing campaign that we'll be doing through the training office coming up sometime probably April. We or about Apple Pay or Google Wallet, any of those type of payment options. Um, Shawn, any other thoughts on our phones and accessing our bank? Would you ever recommend using your Chrome on your phone to access your bank account versus using the app?
Um, it's not a bad thing to do it that way. I think using the app or using the browser on your phone, either one would be fine. I think one of the things to be cautious of, though, is where you're connecting from. So, if for instance you have a data plan, which most of us do, and you're not at home, stay away from the free Wi-Fi at coffee shops, airports, hotels, and use your cell carrier's data connection for the connection. It's much more secure and much less likely to be intercepted. If you're at home, use the wireless in your home because you've set that up. You know it's secure. That's your network. But at the end of the day, it becomes really a function of making sure you understand where you are and who your phone is talking to on the data side.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, one of the things I do when I'm away from APU and I'm away from home is I turn my wireless off, so my phone doesn't try to connect to whatever random hotspot I happen to be driving by. Because
Yeah,
I just I want to know who my phone is talking to.
exactly. Yeah. We do have a question here.
Okay.
Um, this one is, do you have any thoughts with the wearable tech and pay options?
So the wearable tech is really an extension of your phone when you at the end of the day. So while I don't have any negative opinions of the wearable tech in itself, the use of it and how it interacts with your phone and the security behind that is all connected. So if you have good passwords, if you have pins set up on your banking and mobile apps that you use for financial transactions, it's about as safe as anything else.
One of the new things with on the Android side with version 5, commonly known as Lollipop, is
Hmm.
trusted devices through Bluetooth.
Hmm.
Thoughts about those?
So, yeah, the trusted devices with Bluetooth is actually really nice because it stops your phone from randomly connecting to other things. The same as the Wi-Fi randomly connecting to open hotspots. If you Now, most of our phones don't sit there in what they call promiscuous mode, where they're discoverable by the world, and that's really a security setting where that's turned off by default. So it's a good layer of security that that's turned off. And now the trusted devices takes that a step further because it even now you have consciously identified only those devices that you know to connect to. So no one can, get close to you in, the Walmart line and, by proximity try to hack into your phone through a Bluetooth connection,
Nice.
which is possible.
So scary what can be done. We do have another question here. This person's been watching the podcast but gets interrupted. And just, I would think it would be good to recap the best way to see if an email is phishing. She saw that you talked about the small print and all of that,
Hmm.
but highlighting what we have out at support.apu.edu is a good
Oh,
resource.
that's a great point. If we go out to, in fact, let me pull up that web page real quick here. Okay, and I will share my screen again. Okay, so if you go to support.apu.edu, I have a article out here, an announcement, where we have the latest spam and phishing messages. If you click on this, what I've done is in this announcement, I am taking screenshots of the latest phishing messages that are making the rounds here at APU and adding them here. Now, these are images only, so you don't have to worry about accidentally clicking on one of these links or opening one of the attachments. And you can always verify what you're seeing in your inbox with what we have here. I am limiting this to the ones that have been very successful and that we've seen a lot of compromised accounts from. So even though there's a fairly short list of examples here, these have been the most impactful. And then another mechanism, if you have something that you're not sure about, is this spam or is it not, you can always send it to spam@apu.edu. That goes to the support desk, and someone there will verify whether it's legitimate or whether it's a phishing email and let you know. But a human will always handle that verification if you send it into spam@apu.edu.
Thanks, Shawn. Um, that is a great question. I appreciate, because the website's very helpful, and there's a lot of good information at support.apu.edu, and
Mhm.
also on the security.apu.edu website. Sean's put a lot there um, to help us understand what's going on in security, as well as links to the Ask the Security Guy videos that we've done.
Yep. All of our archives are there.
Well, it is now 11:30. Thank you guys for watching. And always, if you have questions, you can email me, you can email Shawn, or even if you can't remember our names, you can email support@apu.edu. They'll get it to us.
Yep.
Lots of ways to get a hold of us. So
Right.
with that, Shawn, any last thoughts?
Nope, I think that's it for today.
And hopefully you'll join us. April 15th, we'll be hanging out with IMT. April, I believe it's the 24th, the last Friday. It'll be Final Friday wrap up. And then once again, beginning of May, first Wednesday of May, Shawn will be back with the latest things happening in security. And so we look forward to hopefully having you join us for those. So
All right.
thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.